Most women are taught that to love is to explain, to chase clarity, to soothe doubt, to silence the unknown before it speaks. But some women, few, rare, mythic, carry a different energy. They do not explain, they do not chase, and they do not beg to be understood. They disappear into themselves and let the silence breathe. They become the unanswered question in a man's soul, and that is where their power begins. She doesn't tell him what she's thinking. She doesn't justify the pause, the quiet, the shift in gaze. She simply allows him to feel it, the absence of certainty, the sudden stillness where warmth used to live. And this unnerves him, because men, especially those still ruled by their ego, are not used to being the ones who wait, the ones who ache for closure, the ones who wonder. Carl Jung knew, what is not made conscious will be lived as fate. A woman who lets a man wonder does not manipulate him. She reveals him to himself. His projections fall away in the silence she offers. His image of her dissolves in the mystery she embodies, and there, in the still waters of her detachment, he is left alone with the echo of his own psyche. The anima, the feminine image within the male unconscious, is awakened not by availability, but by distance, by allure, by the space she creates when she refuses to play the role he assigned her. The more he reaches, the more she retreats, not out of cruelty, but out of knowing, because she has met herself in the depth. She has confronted her own darkness, her own longing, her own capacity to break and rebuild. She has done her shadow work, and now she cannot be touched by surface desire. When a woman no longer fears being misunderstood, she becomes untouchable, not in body, but in essence. She is no longer a reflection of what a man wants her to be. She becomes a mirror of what he cannot face within himself. And that is where obsessio is born, not from sex, not from affection, but from uncertainty, from the unbearable mystery of a woman who holds herself in silence, as if she knows a truth too dangerous to speak aloud. You might think she's cold, that she doesn't care, but that would be a mistake made by the uninitiated, by those who confuse detachment with absence. No, she feels deeply, but she has learned the difference between emotional reactivity and emotional mastery, between giving love freely and leaking energy into voids that do not reciprocate. She has learned to wait, not for him, but for herself, for her soul to speak, and that often requires space, stillness, solitude, the fertile ground in which inner knowing blooms. There is something almost mythological about a woman who allows the unknown to work through her. She becomes an oracle, not in words but in presence. Men sense it, they feel it. She doesn't have to explain why she pulled back, why she doesn't respond with urgency, why her eyes hold something he cannot name. She lets him sit in it, in the not knowing, in the longing, in the tension. And for a man who lives on the surface, it will drive him mad. He will call it games, manipulation, emotional withholding. But for the man who has done his own inner work, for the man who has sat with his own pain, his own shame, his own mother wounds, he will recognize the silence as sacred. He will bow to the mystery, not demand to control it. You too have this power, not the power to wound, but the power to withhold explanation, to trust that what is real does not need to be proven, defended, or declared. The more you explain yourself to someone who cannot meet you, the more you fracture your soul, the more you chase understanding from someone who hasn't earned access to your interior, the more you abandon yourself. Let him wonder, let him feel the emptiness where your energy used to be. Let him sit in the discomfort of your absence, not as punishment, but as initiation. Because if he is meant to rise, he will rise in the silence. If he is meant to see you, truly see you, he will not demand your light. He will find his own, so he can meet you in yours. The woman who lets him wonder is not passive. She is deeply active within. She is tending to her intuition, her creativity, her sacred rage, her sensuality, her spiritual path. She does not explain this path, she walks it, with or without him. And in doing so she becomes unforgettable, not because of what she gave, but because of what she refused to give away too easily, herself. He remembers her not by the things she said, but by the weight of what she never had to say. Her absence is not an empty space, it is a presence that haunts. It lingers in his memory like unfinished poetry, like a dream interrupted mid-sentence. That is the danger and the power. A woman who lets him wonder becomes a story he cannot close. She exists not as a completed chapter, but as an open loop, one that returns in quiet moments, one that whispers through the cracks of his certainty. This is not about manipulation, it is about truth. The woman who lets him wonder is not playing a game, she is refusing to play one. She does not offer her soul as compensation for his confusion. She does not contort her feminine energy to soothe his ego. She knows that men who have not faced their unconscious cannot love clearly. They love only the reflection of their own desire, and abandon it the moment it fails to affirm them. But she is not here to be adored for illusions. She is here to be seen. And to be seen, truly seen, one must allow the space for vision to sharpen. She allows that space. She is willing to be the enigma, the eclipse, the silence in the room, because she has done the inner work required to hold that tension without crumbling. Carl Jung wrote that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When she pulls back, when she goes quiet, when she doesn't explain, she is giving him a rare gift, the opportunity to confront what lives beneath his control, beneath his pride, beneath his need to be reassured. She lets him meet his own unconscious. That's the wonder. That's the danger. You see, wonder is not weakness. Wonder is power, when it is chosen. When a woman chooses not to clarify herself in a world obsessed with clarity, she becomes something higher than desirable. She becomes sacred. Her energy becomes alchemical. Her presence, an initiation. He must earn her, not through performance or promises, but through transformation. If he wants her, truly wants her, he must evolve. He must confront the parts of himself that cannot tolerate ambiguity, that panic in the face of a woman who is sovereign, who does not orbit his validation. This is where most men falter, because they are taught to pursue certainty, to dominate doubt, to conquer the unknown. And she is the unknown. Her essence is lunar, tidal, ever-changing. She cannot be mapped. She cannot be contained. And so, the more evolved men will recognize this kind of woman is not a prize to win, but a path to walk. She will not hand herself over. She will not define herself in words. She speaks in silence, in presence, in paradox. And what happens to the man who wonders? Some walk away. Some try to replace her. Some bury her memory beneath distractions. But the ones who cannot forget are the ones who needed to wonder, because the wondering revealed the truth. He never really saw her. He only saw his version of her, his projection, his expectation, his fantasy. When she stopped feeding that illusion, she became real. And real women, whole women, are terrifying to the unready. Have you ever noticed how the moment you detach, the world leans in? It is not because you've become cold, but because you've become centered, still, unavailable to chaos. That is the energy this woman holds. She does not reach, she rests. She doesn't demand a place in his life. She becomes the place he returns to in his mind when everything else feels hollow. And you, if you are this woman or becoming her, you already know. Letting him wonder is not an act of withholding. It is an act of trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in the process. Trust that what is meant for you will not be confused by your silence. It will not be threatened by your sovereignty. It will not shrink from your truth, because feminine power is not loud. It does not chase, explain, or argue. It magnetizes, it speaks in symbols, it invites a deeper seeing, and for those who cannot see, it disappears. So let him wonder, let the silence do its work, let the space become his mirror. If he is meant to meet you, he will have to meet himself first. In the space she leaves behind, something ancient awakens in him, something primal, something he does not understand. He finds himself questioning not just her, but himself. Why did her silence cut deeper than any spoken word? Why does her absence echo louder than the voices of women who tried endlessly to explain themselves? Why does he feel exposed? Because he is. Her absence exposes the hollowness of his performance, the fragility of his ego, the dependency he masked as dominance. Her withdrawal, her refusal to offer herself on command, is not cruelty, it is revelation. She becomes a mirror, polished not by flattery or seduction, but by her refusal to need him. And that refusal is unbearable for a man who has only ever known how to possess, a man who equates a woman's love with her accessibility, her devotion, her willingness to be understood on his terms. Boo. The woman who lets him wonder does not offer love as currency, she offers presence as ceremony. To be near her is to be invited, not demanded. To understand her is to surrender, not to conquer. Carl Jung spoke often of the anima, the inner feminine that lives within every man. It is not just softness or sensitivity, it is soul. It is the source of creativity, intuition, depth, and it is awakened not by lust, but by mystery, not by obedience, but by challenge. The anima reveals herself through the woman he cannot define, the one who moves like myth and breathes like poetry, the one he cannot fix, label, or cage, and in that wandering he is changed. But not all men are ready for that change. Some will retreat into rage, confusion, or dismissal. They will call her difficult, they will say she's playing games. But deep down, beneath the armor of masculinity, they will remember her. She is the archetype etched in their unconscious, the dark feminine, the high priestess, the lover who vanished without a trace, leaving only the scent of her silence and the outline of her soul. This woman doesn't abandon. She ascends. She exits the stage of performance and returns to her temple. There, she meditates on truth. She watches without watching. She listens without reacting. She waits, not for him, but for alignment. If the masculine energy does not rise to meet her, she will not descend to meet it. Do you feel the power in that detachment, that refusal to betray yourself for the sake of emotional crumbs? That is the essence of feminine sovereignty, to belong first to yourself, to no longer barter your softness for scraps of attention, to no longer explain your worth to those addicted to your availability. Because your availability is not proof of your love, your silence is not rejection. It is discernment. It is the space where your intuition speaks. It is the gap where his projections die and your tea. So let him feel it, the not knowing. Let him question. Let him ache. Let him reach the edge of himself in the silence you've created, because the man who is worthy of you will not run from that silence. He will walk into it. He will sit in it, and he will emerge changed. The feminine is not here to make a man feel safe in his illusions. She is here to awaken him, sometimes with softness, sometimes with fire, but always with truth. And truth, by its very nature, demands discomfort. It shatters illusions. It kills delusion. It opens the wound. The woman who lets him wonder is not passive. She is precise. Every word she does not speak is chosen. Every distance she creates is intentional, not to punish but to protect what is sacred. And until he understands that, he will continue to search for her in women who cannot hold a candle to the stillness she embodied. You must understand. This isn't about him at all. It's about you. It's about your willingness to stop offering explanations to those who haven't earned your story. It's about your capacity to be whole, even when misunderstood. It's about your devotion to the voice within you that says, I will not shrink for love. That voice is your guide. That voice is your power. And every time you let a man sit in the space of your absence without rushing to fill it, that voice grows louder, more certain, more sovereign. Because some lessons cannot be taught through dialogue, they must be taught through distance. There is a sacred violence in her silence, not the kind that wounds, but the kind that transforms, the kind that shatters illusions and demands rebirth, the kind of silence that carries the weight of 1,000 ancestors who were never allowed to be still, never allowed to pull back, never allowed to be unknown. But she chooses the unknown. She chooses to no longer explain her softness, to no longer offer her sea, all on a silver platter to be dissected, devoured, or dismissed. She chooses to let him feel the ache of her stillness, the cold absence of her once burning warmth, the electric edge of uncertainty that now haunts the space where her laughter used to live. And he feels it. It lingers, in the unanswered messages, in the final look she gave without words, in the way her energy exited the room before her body ever did. He begins to see her everywhere, in strangers who share her silence, in songs that sound like the spaces she created, in the stillness of his own mind where her voice used to echo. And this is no coincidence, because the woman who lets him wonder becomes an archetype in his unconscious. She activates what Jung called the numinous, a spiritual charge that transcends logic, a force that stirs the soul with fear and fascination. She is no longer a woman he can touch. She becomes a symbol, a portal, a key he can't quite turn, and yet he tries. He replays the moments. He questions what she meant when she paused, when she looked away, when she said nothing at all. He wonders if he missed something, some clue, some sign, some sacred thread he was too proud to follow. He doesn't realize it yet, but he is entering his shadow. Her absence is the map. Her withdrawal is the invitation, but only if he's willing to descend. You see, when a woman allows a man to wonder, she is not simply withholding communication. She is calling him inward. She is asking him, silently, "What were you looking for in me that you haven't yet found in yourself?" That question terrifies him, because it implies that the mystery isn't her, it's him. She was merely the mirror. She reflected his projections, his fantasies, his wounds. She became whatever his unconscious needed her to be, the muse, the mother, the temptress, the redeemer. And when she stepped out of the reflection, when she became herself untamed and unexplainable, he could no longer use her to escape his own emptiness. That's the real loss. Not her affection, not her body, not her words. The loss is what she revealed about him just by stepping away. This is the part most men never speak of, the hollow ache that follows the departure of a woman who didn't just love him, but unmasked him. Her silence becomes the loudest voice he's ever heard, and no matter how many voices try to drown it out, it remains low, haunting, merciless in its truth. And you, if you have ever been this woman, you must know the weight of it, the temptation to explain yourself, to soften the blow, to speak just one more time in the hope that he might finally see you clearly. But you didn't. You knew better, because to explain would be to betray your knowing. To speak would be to soothe the very wound he was meant to face alone. You loved him, but not more than you loved your own becoming. You chose the lonely road, the high road, the road that leads back to self, and in that choice you reclaimed the sacred. The sacred woman is not always soft. She is not always smiling. Sometimes she is a storm that leaves a man on his knees, not because she broke him, but because she revealed that he was already broken. Sometimes she is the lesson he never saw coming, and when she lets him wonder, she opens a door that only he can walk through. Alone, some will rise. They will do the work. They will face the mother wound, the fear of abandonment, the addiction to validation. They will stop seeking her in others and begin seeking themselves. And perhaps, when the time is right, they will meet again, as two whole beings, not savior and seeker, not addict and supply, but soul to soul, equal, earned, but others. They will forget, or try to. They will bury her beneath distractions and call it moving on. They will replace her with women who explain, who stay, who give without boundaries. But it will never be the same, because once a man has tasted the mystery of a woman who lets him wonder, everything else tastes like noise, so let him wonder. Let the silence unravel him. Let your absence echo until it becomes music or madness, because the ones who are meant for you will not fear your silence. They will rise to meet it with presence, and in that rising, if it comes, it will not look like begging or pleading or promises laced with desperation. No, when a man truly awakens in the aftermath of her absence, he doesn't come crawling, he comes transformed. He returns with a stillness in his eyes, not the stillness of resignation, but the stillness of a man who has faced himself in the mirror she held up and did not look away, a man who has met his own shadow and bowed before it, a man who now understands that her silence was not rejection, but initiation, because that is what she becomes, the silent initiator. Not through force, but through presence, through the subtle feminine refusal to explain, to rescue, to repeat herself for the 1000th time. The woman who lets him wonder trusts that pain can be alchemical, that longing can be purifying, that absence can be more loving than closeness ever was. You see, some women are born to be medicine, And medicine is not always sweet. Sometimes it burns, sometimes it breaks you before it heals, sometimes it leaves you on the floor, choking on your own illusions. But when a woman chooses to stop softening herself to protect a man's ego, she becomes that medicine. Pure, unapologetic, and utterly unforgettable. Carl Jung taught that wholeness comes from integration, not from chasing the light, but from embracing the dark. The woman who walks away without a word is not running, she is integrating. She is reclaiming the parts of herself that were scattered through his inability to meet her. The parts she gave away too soon, too easily, too loudly, and now, yielded in silence, she gathers herself like a queen reclaiming her crown. Let's speak plainly now. A man who is terrified by your silence is not ready to meet your soul. He is not ready for depth. He is not ready for the truth of you, the full, radiant, mysterious, untamed you. He only knows how to love what he can name, claim, and explain. But you were never meant to be explained. You were meant to be felt. And the tragedy for many men is that they do not feel until it's too late. They chase after what they could possess. And when it vanishes, they finally begin to taste the hunger their soul has carried all along. The hunger that only depth can feed. The hunger that no surface-level connection will ever satisfy again. That is the hunger you awaken when you let him wonder. And for those who are ready, it becomes the beginning of their inner revolution. He may try to replace you, to drown your memory in other women's laughter, in shallower waters. But what he felt with you cannot be replicated, because it was never about what you gave. It was about what you withheld. It was the space, the depth, the not knowing that changed him. Some men never return, but they never forget. And you are not waiting for return. You are not holding your breath, because once a woman tastes her own silence, once she stands sovereign in the stillness of her soul, she realizes something extraordinary. She was never waiting for him. She was waiting for herself. And now that she has found herself, she cannot be undone. Not by charm, not by apologies, not by temporary efforts to soothe the storm she once swallowed for his comfort. She knows now she is the storm. She is the calm and the chaos, the mystery and the mirror, the fire and the ocean. And she no longer explains her weather to men who haven't studied their own climate. To every woman who has felt the urge to clarify her absence, to apologize for her boundaries, to justify the power of her intuition, resist it. Do not dull your instincts to make others comfortable. Let them feel the discomfort of not knowing. Let them sit in the sacred tension of your silence. Let them taste the unknown and decide whether they are ready to meet you there or not. And to the man who dares to wonder, let him. Let him wrestle with the mystery. Let him ache for answers he must find within himself. Because if he is truly worthy of you, he will not run from the wonder. He will rise to it. He will learn to speak the language of silence, to hear the voice behind your stillness, to feel the truth that lives in what you do not say. And then, only then, may he return, not as a seeker of comfort, but as a keeper of presence, as one who knows the worth of a woman who lets him wonder and does not fear it. There is a moment, quiet, unnoticed, almost invisible to the world, when a woman who once loved loudly falls in love with her own silence, not as a weapon, not as revenge, but as a sacred return. She no longer asks, "Does he miss me?" but instead whispers, "Did I ever truly see myself while loving him?" And that question changes everything. This is the climax of her evolution, not when he comes back, but when she no longer needs him to. Not because she's hardened, but because she's healed. The ache that once tethered her to his uncertainty has become wisdom. The longing that once hollowed her out now fills her with fire. She no longer waits at the gates of someone else's recognition, because she has stepped fully into her own kingdom. Carl Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming whole, demands we reclaim all the pieces of ourselves we once projected onto others. And what is romantic obsession if not a projection of our unmet soul? The woman who lets him wonder is not cruel. She is calling him, gently yet relentlessly, to retrieve his soul from the image he cast upon her. But the final truth, the one that cannot be taught, only lived, is this. She was never his to lose. She may have walked beside him. She may have opened her body, her mind, her heart like a cathedral. She may have wanted him with a fire so clean it scared her. But beneath all that, she always belonged to something deeper, something sacred, something silent, her own knowing. And once she returns to that knowing, she is changed, not in the way heartbreak leaves you bitter, but in the way holy fire burns away illusion. She sees now, with terrifying clarity, what she once mistook for love. The chasing, the explaining, the trying, the aching, all of it was a negotiation of worth. But now there is no negotiation. There is only truth, and truth does not beg to be understood. So when he finally reaches out, whether in regret, in longing, or in genuine transformation, he does not find the woman he left behind. That version of her is gone. She buried that girl in the silence. In her place stands a woman who does not need to be needed, who will never again trade her self-possession for a few tender words. And this is the ultimate danger, the most beautiful kind. Not that she lets him wander, but that in doing so she becomes unreachable by anything less than truth. Men who used to reach for her with half effort and fast words will find their hands empty. They will feel the hollowness of their gestures, because she no longer responds to need, only to presence. She no longer reacts to pursuit, only to depth. And she no longer explains why. She simply chooses. You feel this, don't you? This isn't about playing hard to get. This is about becoming so whole that you cannot be seduced by what does not serve your expansion. It's about looking at a man not with anger or desire, but with sacred neutrality. And in that neutrality, he feels something he cannot explain. You are not waiting for him anymore. And that is the silence that roars. This is not just about romantic power. This is about spiritual rebirth, about reclaiming the fragments of your psyche scattered across conversations, memories, apologies you never needed to make. It's about realizing you were never hard to love. You were just offering depth to someone afraid of drowning. Now you swim in your own waters, still, quiet, dangerous in the way only the healed feminine can be. Not dangerous because she wounds, but because she does not abandon herself to soothe others anymore. She does not perform, she does not prove, she does not shrink. And this is why she is unforgettable. Not because she made him wonder, but because she let him. Because she knew that if he could not meet her where silence meets soul, then no explanation in the world would make him stay. And so she walks, not away, but within, not bitter, but free. And when she turns her gaze inward, when she finally sees herself without the lens of his perception, she whispers the most sacred vow: I am not yours to figure out, I am mine to become. And that is the real ending, not the return of the man, not the apology, not the reconciliation. The ending is her rebirth. A woman who no longer waits to be chosen, a woman who chooses herself. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.